Welcome, everyone, to day 2 of the Ad Monsters Conference. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to be here. I actually attended the Ad Monsters Conference last year in Miami and had an absolute blast. So I'm bummed that it's not in person, but the reality is that that is the world that we're living in. I want to start by thanking Rob for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And it's great to virtually see friends, partners, coworkers, and I'm excited to see the dialogue coming through on the polls here. I will tell you, last year in Miami, I had a lot of fun with probably people that are tuning in right now. So excited to see you, and hopefully we'll have a virtual cocktail later. I'm here ultimately to tell you guys about my story over the last 12 to 15 months, which I can tell you has been a challenging one. It started very exciting and then has turned into probably one of the most challenging times of my career. So I want to start by taking you through a bit of a story here. 15 months ago, April 2020, I started at TripAdvisor. I came because I saw an amazing untapped asset and under-monetized platform. And the company was ready to diversify for the future of TripAdvisor and what it looked like in its 20th year anniversary. It was investing in a brand transformation strategy, membership and loyalty, which is critical to advertising and sort of the cornerstone of our data strategy. And then the media business, which had been around for 10 years, but not necessarily part of the core pillars of revenue for TripAdvisor. So they brought me in to really diversify our solutions, think about new ways to monetize our brand and IP, diversify the skill sets that we're servicing the business, and ultimately grow revenue, which I was extremely excited to do, as you can imagine. I put in place a strategy to ultimately make our audience extend. We have 450 million plus monthly active unique. So thinking about addressable audiences outside of the .com. How do we think about social and YouTube and other places that consumers are intersecting with travel? And then we were really doing a great job in the tourism space, but hadn't necessarily cracked the non-endemic categories that are ultimately very aligned to when you're traveling, whether it's shopping or having a beverage or purchasing it with your credit card. We also focused, as you can imagine, this group would understand the core focus of data and the immense amount of data signals that TripAdvisor have. So we focused on our audiences, how we ultimately can serve our clients with those audiences through insights and data products, and then ultimately about the way that we work internally to make sure that we're making that come to life in our day-to-day. Diversification of revenue, disciplines, and solution servicing our clients were also core as we think about boxes and banners sort of going all programmatic. Everything that we sort of built was to hit the touch points of non-endemic partners, think about ways that strategy, off-platform distribution, programmatic, and marketing really played into the future of our solutions for our clients. And the good news is we made big promises and we kept them. Throughout 2019, we sort of reset the platform for media. I came in and you always come into a company thinking you don't. There was a lot of things that hadn't been invested that were basics in the media business. So I was really sort of resetting the platform for growth for 2020. And as we headed into December, we did just that. In Q1, we were forecasted to achieve 25% year-on-year growth, which was something the company hadn't seen in years for the media business specifically. So we were just starting to scratch the surface. I was, ultimately on the road 24/7, meeting with clients, really understanding their needs, how we could super serve them. And then the reality set in. As you can imagine, these pictures are pretty dark, but this is exactly what happened overnight. Restaurants were empty, planes were grounded, and attractions were empty. This picture of the Brooklyn Bridge is actually something that I witnessed myself. I lived in the financial district and walked across the Brooklyn Bridge and could not believe that I was walking on my own across the Brooklyn Bridge on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Just unprecedented times that you would never imagine we'd be living in. And from a revenue and a business perspective, this quote is from our CEO, Steve Kaufer. TripAdvisor revenue down 86% in Q2, which was still better than expected. If you think about that number, overnight, you would never expect a business to drop to those levels. You can never plan for it. There's something in your business planning and continuity planning that you do look at competitive threats and things that could ultimately come attack to your business, but to the tune of 20, 30%, not 85 plus. And for me, it was scary, right? Like I was traveling from January right through to March. I was everywhere. I was in London and the West Coast. I was in APAC earlier in the year. And by March 9th, I was still traveling, which is unbelievable to say, but I landed in JFK from the West Coast where I had 3 days of client meetings and everything sort of set in, both at the airport and my taxi ride home as I was hearing that sports events were getting canceled. It was emotional. I think I was in such a go mode that I realized sort of the impacts that we're realizing overnight. And my forecast calls went from being the best meeting of the week throughout Q1, where I was really feeling like we're getting the fruits of our labor throughout 2019 and really about to accelerate this business, to one of the worst calls where 50% of the revenue fell out week over week and then continued to decline. And then I had to go into action mode. The reality is the business, my team, clients, we needed continuity plans that we didn't have in place, which was really, really challenging because the uncertainty of the business, travel, the pandemic and COVID cases increasing was not something anybody could plan for. But I will tell you, there was about 50 different business models to try to plan for the future the best we possibly could. And trust was a critical factor. You know, I think throughout the entire pandemic and as we're heading forward into 2021, trust is the catalyst of any recovery. Trust is something that TripAdvisor has built its business on over the course of the last 20 years and will continue to be critical and the cornerstone of our recovery. We also had what are stages of recovery within our business continuity planning. And the reality was the first was decline. We knew that the news was spreading rapidly, social distancing measures were in place, and travel was declining overnight. We then started to see some plateaus. We're a global business, so we were seeing these impacts in APAC in December, January. So the realities is each region was very different, each vertical, and how consumers were reacting to the restrictions were sort of pretty fluid across each region and vertical. So we had to look through each region and say, where are we plateauing? Where are we in decline phase? And then how are we emerging outside of that so we can ultimately double down on the places that are coming back quickest. So as restrictions passed, lockdown sort of eased up, people are going out. They're going to restaurants. They're supporting their local businesses, which was the emerge phase. We're right now somewhere between plateau and domestic across our 190 countries that we operate in, which is challenging to manage, as you can imagine. The complexity of that is really tough. And we're hopeful that the final stage is not too far out, that we're going to have a vaccine and we'll get back to all of our travel that we are all dreaming about. And people are back to international traveling on a regular basis. We ultimately had to put an action plan in place that covered employees, shareholders, travelers, partners, and they're all co-dependent and interconnected pillars. Like, the reality is some of the things that we were doing, we're really crossing every single one of these. But I really wanted to make sure that you guys understood our 4 areas of focus as we were thinking about how to weather this storm and come out of it stronger. Our employees, obviously, our most important asset, and that was our primary focus. Our shareholders, our board, our business, really, really critical as a fast follow to think about the ways that we're going to come out of this strong. Our consumers, the travelers that make our business a reality. And then our partners, last but not least, who are critical to the longevity of TripAdvisor. So starting with our employees, and this illustration is sort of indicative of how everyone's world's changed overnight. So this isn't just TripAdvisor or travel. Everyone sort of had to go to a virtual world, think about ways to stay hyper connected, manage the internal complexities of your personal life, whether you have kids or other things that ultimately were intercepting with your work. And figure out how to make that your new normal. But whenever I took a step back at how to think about what everyone was going through on my team specifically, but the broader TripAdvisor organization, it sort of goes far beyond travel. It goes far beyond our business struggles. It goes far beyond even, honestly, the reduction in workforce that we had to put in place, because this is an unprecedented time. If you think about schools being canceled, tape measures on floors for grocery stores, lines outside of stores to get essentials for your day-to-day, entire sports seasons canceled, concerts, tours, festivals canceled, weddings. My sister was getting married this year. She pushed it to next. It was an emotional 3 months to try to figure out whether she should do it or not. But really challenging. Family celebrations, holidays, people are having babies and not getting to see each other to celebrate that, and ultimately the moments that your life is sort of predicated on enjoying. Masses, churches closed. No gatherings of 50 or more. Then it became 20 or more, 10 or more. Really, really tough to think about how to socialize with anybody outside of your home. Shortage of masks, gowns, gloves for frontline workers. Shortage of ventilators for critical ill. Pandemic sets in. Toilet paper, disinfectant, nobody can buy it. Shelves are bare. Government closed borders. Obviously, everybody knows Trump has been closing borders, really, really challenging. Needless to say, who would have thought this would be our reality? Nobody. And the team has their own independent challenges, right? Everybody has a collective mission and are really trying to lean on each other. But the reality is there's individual circumstances that I had to sort of tailor and really adjust how I managed my global team to make sure that everybody felt fully supported. We had a massive workforce reduction. I had to cut over 50% of my team, which was beyond. We went from hyper growth mode to, how do we manage this really challenging time and rebuild as we're coming out of it. So consolidation across different functions and a focus on specific regions that made up the majority of the revenue, and new competencies and learning and development integrated to the team to make sure that we were set up for long-term success. And the reality is the mission did not change. We still have our North Star. Everything that we built in 2019 is the same, thankfully. The path to get there is just different. So rebuilding to that ultimate path together was my strategy for my team. How did I pull them in to really help reinform our operating model think about ways to prioritize and get everybody exposure, take advantage of this crisis, and think about things we wouldn't ever have been able to do as a business and get those things done. Consistent communication has also been top priority for me. I think about ways that everybody needs to stay abreast of what's going on and help drive the ball forward. Not having daily interactions and being able to walk up to somebody's desk. So Slacks are the new walk up to somebody's desks. Emails have obviously probably blown up for everyone because you can't have those quick in-person conversations. We're having stand-ups as a team to make sure that everything that's going on across the team, everybody feels supported. Newsletters, things that ultimately can, we call it the quarantine communicator. Like, how do you communicate during this quarantine in the most effective way? We also led with empathy, and it goes back to everybody's situation being different. I had to think about my own personal feelings and how I was ultimately dealing with this pandemic and the change in my personal situation, my professional situation. And the way I did that, honestly, was through being really exposed. I was extremely transparent and have been on everything personal that I normally would not put into my business world. And honestly, it's helped. It's been therapeutic to me. It's sort of opened up the team to understand where I come from and what I'm dealing with, and help each other sort of move forward together. We also had to remain relevant. I mean, we are, I'll talk about this in a second, but we're rolling out insights on a daily and sometimes hourly basis because things are changing that quickly. And then what the future of travel looks like. We all have our theories, but the reality is we need to embrace innovation because we are not going to come out of this the same way we went into it. Change has been accelerated. What would normally happen in 10 years is happening in 3 months with regards to digital transformation and things that are important ultimately to every business with regards to health and safety and mobility. And the nice thing is I do constant check-ins with the team, and they're feeling positive, which is a great thing. If you read some of these, people understood sort of the position the company was in. They're feeling positive. They're genuinely excited. They're thankful for still being at the company and really want to be part of the solution. So this sort of gut check has always been really critical to me because it's hard to get to everybody, but making sure I have an ear to the ground is important to make sure I know what I'm doing that's working, what's not working, and how I can do better. Our shareholders, so our business, right after our employees, we had to think about a plan to get out of this pandemic, to weather 85+% revenue declines while we still had the same cost base. And the reality is what we do today and what we say today makes a difference for where we end in the future. And to be completely frank, a lot of it was triage mode. Who knows? Like you don't contingency plan for things like this. You don't understand sort of what's coming tomorrow, never mind what's coming in 2 to 3 years. But we really took a look at how we could focus our operating model on where we believed the future was going to be, which has made a difference. We want the industry to rebound. We want TripAdvisor to rebound. And we're really optimistic about the future because the reality is travel is resilient. I personally know that because I'm longing to go on a trip right now. And we're playing the long game. If you think about the ad industry for travel specifically, it was down 93% at its all-time low in Q2, which is crazy, right? Like effectively almost down to zero revenue overnight. And there's so many things out of our control. As cases increase, as government restrictions loosen or tighten up, we can't impact those things. They're all uncertain to sort of how we can take the business forward. So we've tried to be as nimble and agile as possible in the things that are doing well. and supporting our partners and supporting our local businesses and our travelers that ultimately are still very focused on the future of travel and how they can get back out there in a safe way. Our consumers, so our travelers are our cornerstone of our business. The 450 plus million monthly active uniques is something we take really seriously and really super serve every day. We went into immediate triage mode with them. So, as TripAdvisor has resonated with travelers for 20 years, our first focus was health and safety. How do we think about ways that we can keep our consumers safe? And if that meant not traveling and impacting our business, that's what we've put out there. We put together a ton of protocols, kept this up to date on a daily basis across all regions that we operate in. And as you guys know, when you're traveling, when you're trip planning, you go many places, right? You do a lot of research and there's inspiration in different places. So we knew before COVID that the traveler journey wasn't linear, but it really is not linear now. We don't know what's coming. We don't know when we're going to travel again. So we're constantly doing consumer sentiment surveys and leveraging our first party data to really derive those insights and help out both our travelers and our partners. And as I mentioned, health and safety are top of mind. 92% of users say cleanliness is the most important factor in seeking accommodations, which makes sense. I mean, everybody's living in this world that they need to make sure that their family and themselves are safe first, and everything else comes second. 84% said cleanliness and sanitation certificates are an important part of the booking travel experience, which was telling for us as we think about updates to our consumer experience and how we make those flags readily available. And then 79% said it's important to publicly display compliance to government safety standards. So then was born TripAdvisor Travel Safe Initiative. This initiative was really born off consumers' main concerns being cleanliness, safety, and flexibility. And when selecting accommodations, if 86% need to make sure that it's safe, then we need to make sure that they have those tools to be able to make that decision. So we launched this. It's ultimately tools that allows hotel owners to select the safety measures that they have in place for the property by accessing a checklist to the TripAdvisor Management Center at no cost. It also includes sanitation procedures, mask wearing guidelines, social distancing policies, and much more. And as you can imagine, we have a lot of hotels. So over 80,000 hotels and restaurants listed on TripAdvisor have already participated in this feature. And our click-through rate on listings that have that safe feature have gone up 25%. We also, I mentioned it earlier, but had undergone a brand transformation at the beginning of 2020. It had been in the works for a year before I was even here. But it was sort of predicated on this notion that there's good out there. And the best guides are people like you that have been there before. And the nice thing is it really is so relevant in this time where people want to give back and really support their local businesses, think about ways to help each other through this pandemic. So we've really leaned into our brand messaging that was newly launched in 2020. We also launched an out-of-home campaign, which you can imagine in the places that we thought would be heavily trafficked were not, which I think is something that the entire industry has had to deal with from a marketing perspective. You had dollars locked up, and the world has changed, and you sort of figure out how to move forward. A lot of our partners' marketing budgets were cut. We were no different. That was the first place that goes, but we did have this out-of-home launch, which was exciting and had great benefits nevertheless. Our partners and businesses, and this illustration is also pretty telling. If you think about enterprise or field sellers, they overnight went to not having face-to-face conversations and frankly, transforming to inside sellers. So we were really focused on giving them the tools and ability to super serve their clients in the most non-transactional way. Vince Lombardi said it takes months, if not years, to find a consumer or to find a customer and seconds to lose one. And that's been our element of focus. How do we make sure that we're there for our partners when they need us the most and not focused on getting a deal done, not focused on the transaction? So there's a few different things we did. The first was put into place tools and features for all of our small and medium businesses. They were critical to make sure that they could manage when they're open, when they're closed, that they had takeout. While cash has been challenging for TripAdvisor due to the revenue declines, we still leaned into sort of donations and a TripAdvisor foundation that contributed over $1 million to support displaced populations impacting COVID. So really great work, regardless sort of the really challenged position we were in. We also had a healthcare relief program where we connected frontline workers with medical workers with available lodging online globally. So that was a huge initiative and really received well across the entire globe. And then virtual experiences. So we have invested heavily in our experiences business, and Viator, which is our experience business, went virtual to support small businesses and help travelers. So there was a program called Roam from Home, which was virtual tours around the world to really see them in their purest state when there wasn't travelers there. From an enterprise perspective, we launched a Love Your Local sponsorship, which really, again, leaned into the small and medium businesses and where the travelers were actually starting to rebound in some markets. We also launched daily and weekly insights for our partners so they better understood the changing trends that we were seeing. And last but not least, a recovery package with deep discounts to help our partners through this and keep their marketing and their brand top of mind for consumers. Insights, as you can imagine, data was critical in us being great partners for all of our clients. We launched a thought leadership study, which was the 5-stage recovery, which has done really, really well. We've also, begun reviewing all creative for our clients, gave them recommendations, embraced the connection of video conferencing with series like React, Rethink, Recover for each different region's clients. We ultimately put in place consultative approaches to how clients, destinations, even non-endemic partners can really align with travel and survive the short term. We also had relevant and frequent webinars. So the travel industry is like many others, are really hungry for information. So as we had it, whether it be travel safe and the initiatives that we were putting in place, or how to keep marketing in these challenging times for small, medium, and enterprise businesses, or sort of the changing trends that we're seeing within our consumers. And our partner feedback has been amazing. We, again, solicit a lot of feedback to make sure that we're doing the right things to support them long-term. And we got an inbound of great, your webinar was outstanding. We had webinars that, 2,000 people, 1,500 to 2,000 people attended, which was amazing to think about the way that the industry has leaned into the things that we can bring to the table for them. So in summary, it looks like I'm a little bit over, which I was hoping to go quicker, but key is take a human first approach in everything with your clients, with your employees, with your consumers. You can put yourself in the mindset of somebody else and really realize that humanity is always the first thing to lean into. immediate support for clients. I mean, whether it be tourism or non-tourism, everybody needs support in these times, and any way you can be there is going to help the industry in the long-term longevity. And then deliver valuable insights focused on strategic approaches to weather the short term and be resilient for the long term and recover strong. Sounds like Rob's. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Christine. How are you?
I'm good. I hope I didn't take too long with that.
No, you were right on time, and you'll have a little time to answer the phone. We could hear the phone ringing in the background.
I'm sorry. There's always something.
That's the reality of today. Don't worry about it. Don't apologize. It's I'm 1 second for my dog starting to bark, right? So that happens.
That's what I did solve for. So he loves to bark at any dog passing by our house. So I did solve for that, so he wouldn't be barking in the background. But I obviously forgot about the phone.
And believe me, again, at any point something will come in. The one thing I really thought about as you were talking about it is really going to be a challenge, not only just in the travel industry, though it might be more acute for you than others, is unfortunately we live in a world where there's going to be some stop and start, right? So in other words, you can build and you're going to feel people more comfortable with getting, feel better about travel, right? And that's going to grow. But you're like one headline or one news story from some of that confidence going away. And so I think the one question I had, and again, I think that applies to more than just travel, right? Yeah. There's any number of industries that if somehow there's an outbreak, either in an area or global, that things will change. And where I was wondering if you've given any thought to is how to work with your advertisers, how to work as a team to kind of structure in a way so that, if something has to stop, you can stop and what's going to happen. I mean, we all learned in March and April what happens when budgets immediately stop. So how do you maybe think that part through to just keeping, and again, I think there's a level of optimism and everything you said that I think we all should just sit there and gravitate to of like, how do you keep building, right? So you're not sitting there just, tepidly moving along or just kind of slow stepping. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. So, we are a travel platform. So that's what I remind sometimes even our leadership team that no matter what, the core, regardless of the vertical, is travel, which is a challenge space. But within that, so if you think about hotels or attractions, flights, they're actually most impacted first, right? Like they're focused on performance. If there's not heads in beds and butts in seats, like they're not advertising. And when they think that they're coming back because they're starting to see the signals, something changes overnight and they're pulling it back again. So the way that we've sort of dealt with that versus more of our destination partners and Outbev and finance is how do we create structures that set them up for success and as much fluidity with what's going to happen in the future as possible. So longer-term deals that allow sort of them the flexibility to spend when it's going to make sense for their business, but the right sort of discounts and negotiation up front that makes sense for them and makes sense for us to sort of plan for the future. So we've been really leaned into those things. I've been meeting with a lot of our hotel clients over the last couple of weeks and understanding their challenges and sort of their sequence of when they're going to come back and how they think about it for us to really help solution that with them.
Great. All right. Well, Christine, thank you so much for helping us kick off the day. And